Let's get a little more on the story and speak to Ashraf Afzal. He's a visiting fellow, Nottingham University Centre for Conflict, Security and Terrorism, joining us live from London. Many thanks for joining us, Ashraf. President Obama came to office in 2009 and he promised that this would be the end, that he was going to bring all the US troops out. But that still hasn't happened. Why is that?
Well, because the security situation is dire. If the American troops are pulled out, it's only going to be a matter of days or weeks before the government in Kabul falls, or certainly before most of the country falls to the Taliban. The point is that after a decade and a half, where over $20 billion were spent in training the Afghan army and security forces, we still have a situation where the country cannot provide security for its own people. It cannot provide effective governance. And as you've just recently heard from a member of parliament, more than half of its annual budget is spent on security. And the fact that it cannot spend on welfare and development, of course, means that the situation is rife for revolutionary groups such as the Taliban to say, look, we're being run by corrupt governments, ineffective governments, and the Taliban can do a better job.
But do you think the US has sort of lost its way? I mean, does it really have a clear strategy in Afghanistan? Because billions of dollars have been spent, and yet 15 years on, if anything, the security situation seems, at least, to be worse.
Of course, and that has sadly been the case for every single venture in the last quarter of a century, where the strategy has been either non-existent or totally ineffective. And there has been a view that if you get rid of less desirable governments, then somehow by magic, democracy and development will sprout. But of course, that isn't the reality for a number of very complex reasons. So we don't have, we've never really had in Afghanistan or in the Middle East a clear political strategy that's based on reality rather than on some imagined principles. And of course, the military strategy can only buy you time. It can't actually provide security in itself. So your point is absolutely well made. There hasn't been a strategy, and there doesn't appear to be a strategy, and all that the government is doing is trying to buy more and more time in the hope that by some magic things might sort themselves out.
I still remember how much hope there was when President Ashraf Ghani came to power. Has any progress been made at all? Maybe not so much in terms of the Taliban, but in terms of human rights, in terms of women's rights, since he came to power?
Well, it depends on who you speak to. The general consensus of opinion is that President Ashraf Ghani is very sincere and largely very effective, but his ability to make a change has been ironically thwarted by the process of democracy itself. Because of the closeness of the election results, he's effectively got to share power with Abdullah, his chief executive. And for years after the result, many of the ministries were not headed up with ministers because agreement couldn't be found between the two main parties as to who should run the various ministries. And so the problem is that in Afghanistan, as in many places, there are personalities who want power and are preventing others who may be able to exercise power from exercising power. There is this absolute obsession with power at the expense of national development. And so Mr. Ashraf Ghani has not been able to fulfill the promises that he came in with.
Okay, many thanks for your time and analysis, Ashraf Afzal, joining us there live from London.